A routine day at the mall takes a shocking turn when a black woman is stopped by security, accused without reason. What happens next changes everything and leaves the entire staff stunned. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon, and the mall was alive with activity. Families shuffled between stores, children tugged on their parents' sleeves, and the aroma of cinnamon pretzels wafted through the air. At the center of it all was Vanessa Carter, a poised and stylish black woman in her early 40s. Dressed in an elegant beige trench coat and holding her leather tote bag, she moved with quiet confidence. Vanessa wasn't just here for shopping. She had come to this mall, her mall, for a routine inspection. Despite her success as a business mogul, she preferred to walk the floors herself occasionally, making sure everything was running smoothly. Today, however, her inspection would take a turn she hadn't anticipated. As Vanessa strolled past a high-end boutique, she noticed two security guards standing near the entrance. One of them, a burly man named Roger, locked eyes with her. His gaze wasn't curious or welcoming. It was cold, suspicious, and fixed. Vanessa instinctively tightened her grip on her bag, but kept walking, dismissing the thought that she was being watched. She had dealt with stares like this before, even in spaces she owned. "Excuse me, ma'am," a voice called sharply from behind her. Vanessa stopped in her tracks, her stomach sinking. She turned to see Roger and his partner approaching her briskly. The surrounding chatter of the mall seemed to fade as shoppers turned to watch the commotion. "Yes?" Vanessa asked calmly, though her heart raced. "We need to see what's in your bag," Roger demanded, his tone authoritative and accusatory. His partner, a younger guard who seemed uneasy, stood silently, avoiding her gaze. Vanessa blinked, stunned by the abruptness. "Is there a problem?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the humiliation creeping up her spine. "We've had reports of suspicious activity," Roger said, crossing his arms. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, his gaze dripping with judgment. "You've been seen lingering near several stores without making a purchase. That's enough to warrant a search." The words hit Vanessa like a slap. She took a deep breath, willing herself to remain composed. "Lingering," she repeated. "I've been walking through the mall just like everyone else." Roger's lips curled into a smirk. "That's not what we've been told," he shot back. "Now, if you don't want this to escalate, I suggest you cooperate." Vanessa glanced around. A small crowd had started to gather, their murmurs adding to her growing sense of vulnerability. She felt the heat of their stares, the judgment in their eyes. She knew what they were thinking, what they always thought when a black person was singled out in public. She took another breath, her voice calm but firm. "I haven't done anything wrong. If you truly believe I've committed a crime, then you should call the police. Otherwise, I'd like to continue my day." Roger's smirk vanished, replaced with a scowl. "Listen, lady," he barked, stepping closer. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. We're trying to keep this mall safe, and I appreciate that," Vanessa replied, meeting his glare. "But profiling your customers isn't part of that job." Her words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Roger's partner shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the crowd, which was now openly watching the confrontation. The tension was palpable, but Roger didn't back down. Instead, he pointed to a bench nearby. "Sit down. We're going to resolve this right now." Vanessa's chest tightened. She wanted to walk away, to assert her dignity, but she also knew the risks of defiance. Black people like her had been punished for far less. The humiliation, however, burned deeply, especially here, in a place she had built with her own hands. Taking a steadying breath, she moved toward the bench. She would comply. For now. But Roger had no idea who he was dealing with, and that truth was about to change everything. Vanessa sat on the cold, hard bench, her back straight and her chin held high. Every movement she made was deliberate, calculated, a quiet assertion of dignity amidst the brewing storm of humiliation. Roger stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching her with the intensity of a predator cornering its prey. His partner hovered nearby, his unease growing as the crowd thickened. "Empty the bag," Roger commanded, his voice echoing louder than necessary, as if he wanted the growing audience to hear. Vanessa slowly opened her bag, her eyes never leaving his face. With steady hands, she began removing items. Her wallet, a notebook, a pen, a small bottle of water. All perfectly ordinary. All perfectly legal. Roger's eyes darted over the contents, a flicker of frustration crossing his face as he found nothing incriminating. But instead of admitting his mistake, he doubled down. "Looks like you're carrying light today," he sneered. "Maybe you stashed the stolen goods somewhere else." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. Vanessa heard snippets of their whispers, some questioning the guards' actions, others reinforcing their biases. Her stomach churned, but she maintained her calm. "You've thoroughly searched my bag," Vanessa said evenly. "If there's nothing else, I'd like to go." Roger's smirk deepened. "Not so fast. We're not done here." Vanessa clenched her fists, her patience wearing thin. "What exactly do you think I've done?" she asked, her voice sharp but controlled. "And why do you think it's me?" Roger hesitated for a moment, caught off guard by her directness. He shifted his weight, glancing at his partner as if searching for backup. The younger guard looked away, his discomfort evident. "You matched the description we were given," Roger said finally, his tone defensive. "That's all there is to it." "And what description would that be?" Vanessa pressed, her eyes narrowing. "A black woman, walking confidently through the mall, or was it something more specific?" The air grew heavier. Vanessa could feel the crowd's attention sharpening, their focus shifting from her to the man towering over her. Roger opened his mouth to respond, but found himself unable to summon the words. His partner finally spoke up, his voice shaky but audible. "Maybe we should just let her go," he said quietly. "It doesn't seem like she's done anything." Roger shot him a glare. "Stay out of this," he barked. Turning back to Vanessa, he pointed a finger at her. "You think you're above all this, don't you? Walking around like you own the place." Vanessa's lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile breaking through her calm demeanor. She straightened her posture, meeting his glare head-on. "Maybe," she said softly, "because I do." Roger froze, his face contorting in confusion. For a moment he looked at her as if trying to determine whether she was joking. But Vanessa's expression didn't waver. "What did you just say?" he demanded, his voice quieter now, tinged with disbelief. "You heard me?" Vanessa replied, her tone steady. "I own this mall. Every store you see, every bench you order people to sit on, it's mine." The crowd collectively inhaled, their murmurs growing louder. Phones began to appear, capturing the unfolding drama. Roger's partner looked like he wanted to melt into the floor, while Roger himself stood rigid, his face a mix of shock and anger. "That's not possible," he scoffed, though his confidence faltered. "You're lying." Vanessa reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a small business card. She held it out to Roger, her hand steady. "Carter Properties," she said. "That's my name on the card. That's my name on the deed. And I'm the CEO." Roger stared at the card as if it might burn him. Slowly, the reality of the situation began to sink in. His face reddened, his bravado crumbling under the weight of his mistake. The crowd's murmurs turned into audible gasps and whispers. Some were appalled by Roger's behavior, others thrilled by the poetic justice unfolding before them. Vanessa stood, her movements slow and deliberate, reclaiming her power. "You made an assumption," she said, her voice calm but cutting. "You saw a black woman and decided I didn't belong here. But I do. I built this. And now you've embarrassed not just me but yourself and this entire mall." Roger opened his mouth to respond but couldn't find the words. His partner tugged at his sleeve, whispering urgently, "We should leave." For the first time, Roger didn't argue. He turned on his heel and walked away, his head hanging low, while his partner followed closely behind. Vanessa watched them go, the sting of the encounter still fresh but softened by the crowd's reaction. Applause broke out, tentative at first, then building into a wave of support. She turned to see strangers smiling at her, nodding their approval. The humiliation she'd felt was still there, but so was something stronger: vindication. As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, a young black girl approached her, her eyes wide with admiration. "Are you really the owner?" the girl asked softly. Vanessa smiled, crouching slightly to meet her gaze. "Yes, I am." The girl's face lit up. "I want to be like you someday." Vanessa's chest tightened, emotions swelling in her throat. She placed a hand gently on the girl's shoulder. "You can be," she said. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As Vanessa walked away, she felt the weight of the encounter still lingering, but she also felt the spark of something brighter. This wasn't just about her. It was about showing others that they belonged, no matter what anyone said. As Vanessa walked through the mall toward her office, her pace slowed. She wasn't in a rush anymore. The adrenaline from the confrontation still coursed through her veins, but the realization of what had just happened began to settle. Her role as the owner of this mall had always been a source of pride. But today it became something more: a responsibility. Every step she took was met with curious eyes. Some people whispered in hushed tones, others smiled or nodded in acknowledgement. Vanessa met each glance with quiet confidence. She wasn't going to let anyone see how deeply the incident had affected her, at least not yet. When she reached her office on the second floor, her assistant, Lila, was already waiting. The young woman's face was pale, her hands clutching a tablet nervously. "Vanessa, are you okay?" Lila asked, her voice tinged with worry. Vanessa set her bag down on the sleek, modern desk and took a deep breath before responding. "I'm fine, Lila," she said, her voice steady but firm. "But something happened downstairs that we need to address." Lila's brow furrowed. "I saw the videos. People are already posting them online. It's going viral." Vanessa's stomach turned. Of course it was going viral. That was the world they lived in now. Moments like these weren't confined to private humiliation. They became public spectacles. She wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or uneasy about the exposure. "Good," Vanessa said after a moment, her tone sharper than she intended. "Let them see it. Let them see what happens when you judge someone by their appearance instead of their character." Lila nodded, but her expression remained uneasy. "What about the security team? Should I schedule a meeting with their manager?" Vanessa's eyes narrowed as the image of Roger's sneering face flashed in her mind. She wasn't the type to retaliate out of spite, but this wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. "Not just the manager," Vanessa said firmly. "I want the entire security team in the conference room by noon. This ends today." Lila hesitated, then nodded. "I'll take care of it." As Lila left the room, Vanessa sank into her chair and stared out the large window overlooking the mall. Shoppers bustled below, their movements blurring into a mosaic of motion. She couldn't help but wonder how many others had been treated the way she was today. How many people had been humiliated, belittled, or dismissed, simply for existing in a space they were told wasn't theirs. Her thoughts were interrupted by the chime of her phone. A notification from a social media platform lit up the screen. She hesitated before unlocking it, bracing herself for the inevitable flood of comments and messages. The video of her confrontation with Roger had already amassed thousands of views. The comments were a mix of outrage, support, and the inevitable negativity that came with anything posted online. One comment caught her attention. "This is why representation matters." She handled that with grace and showed them exactly who's in charge. Vanessa's lips twitched into a small smile. Grace. That word felt like a lifeline, reminding her of the power she wielded, not just as the owner of the mall, but as a role model for others who faced similar struggles. She turned her phone off and straightened her posture. There was work to be done, and she wasn't going to let this moment pass without making a difference. At precisely noon, Vanessa walked into the conference room, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The entire security team was seated around the long table, their faces a mixture of nervousness and defiance. Roger sat at the far end, his arms crossed and his jaw set in a stubborn line. His partner avoided eye contact, staring intently at a clipboard as if it held the answers to all his problems. Vanessa placed her hands on the table and leaned forward slightly, her presence commanding the room. "Let me make one thing very clear," she began, her voice low but firm. "What happened this morning was unacceptable." The room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Vanessa's gaze swept across the team, landing on Roger. "This mall is more than just a collection of stores. It's a community space, a place where everyone, regardless of their background, should feel welcome. And today, your actions sent the exact opposite message." Roger shifted in his seat but said nothing. Vanessa straightened, her tone softening slightly. "I understand that your job isn't easy. You're tasked with keeping this space safe, and that comes with challenges. But safety isn't an excuse for profiling. It's not an excuse for disrespect." One of the younger guards raised his hand hesitantly. Vanessa nodded, giving him permission to speak. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for what happened," he stammered. "I wasn't involved, but I should have said something. I didn't know you were the owner, but even if you weren't, it wasn't right." Vanessa gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. "Thank you. Accountability starts with recognizing when we've fallen short." She turned her attention back to Roger, who was now glaring at the table. "Do you have anything to say?" she asked pointedly. Roger finally looked up, his expression guarded. "I was just doing my job," he muttered. "You matched the description we were given." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "And what description was that exactly?" Roger hesitated, then sighed heavily. "A suspicious individual, loitering near the luxury stores." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious because I was standing there? Or suspicious because I didn't fit your idea of who should be shopping there?" Roger didn't answer. The silence spoke volumes. "This isn't just about me," Vanessa continued. "This is about every person who has been made to feel unwelcome here because of assumptions like yours. It's about creating a culture where respect is the rule, not the exception." The room remained silent as Vanessa's words sank in. She took a deep breath, her tone softening further. "I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to make sure this doesn't happen again. Starting today, we'll be implementing mandatory training for the entire security team, bias training, de-escalation techniques, and customer relations. You'll learn how to do your job better, and you'll be held accountable for it." Roger's face reddened, but he said nothing. Vanessa turned to the rest of the team. "If anyone has an issue with these changes, you're welcome to speak with me privately. But let me be clear, this is non-negotiable." As Vanessa left the room, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The battle wasn't over, but the first steps toward change had been taken. The days following the confrontation brought a mix of challenges and progress. The security team's training sessions began immediately, and Vanessa made a point to attend the first one herself. She wanted them to see that this wasn't just a corporate directive, it was personal. Her presence underscored the importance of the initiative, and she hoped it would set the tone for the changes to come. The training was eye-opening for many, particularly for the younger guards who had never considered how implicit biases could influence their actions. The facilitator, a seasoned expert in diversity and inclusion, used role-playing scenarios to demonstrate the harmful effects of profiling. Watching these scenarios play out, Even Roger couldn't ignore the parallels to his behavior. One exercise asked participants to imagine themselves as customers being unjustly targeted. When it was Roger's turn, he hesitated before stepping into the role. As he described how it felt to be falsely accused and humiliated, something shifted in his demeanor. For the first time, he seemed to truly grasp the impact of his actions. After the session, Vanessa approached Roger as he lingered near the exit. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a quiet uncertainty. "Chief Harris, Ms. Harris," he began awkwardly. I need to say I'm sorry for what happened the other day." Vanessa studied him for a moment, gauging his sincerity. "I appreciate that," she said finally. "But an apology isn't where this ends. It's where it starts." Roger nodded, his face earnest. "I get that. I want to do better." Vanessa's expression softened. "Good, because doing better isn't just about you, it's about the people who come here every day. If you can remember that, you'll be on the right track." Roger extended a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Vanessa shook it. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a step forward. The changes Vanessa implemented began to ripple through the mall in ways she hadn't anticipated. Word spread about the incident and the measures she'd taken to address it. Customers began to notice the difference, not just in the behavior of the security team, but in the overall atmosphere. The mall felt more welcoming, more inclusive. Vanessa received letters and emails from shoppers who had experienced similar situations in the past. Many thanked her for standing up for them, for using her position to create meaningful change. It was humbling, but it also reinforced her sense of responsibility. One day, as Vanessa walked through the mall, she overheard a conversation that stopped her in her tracks. A young black girl, no older than 10, was holding her mother's hand as they browsed a jewelry store. The girl pointed to a security guard standing nearby and said, "Mommy, that lady owns the mall. She looks like me." Vanessa felt a lump rise in her throat. She hadn't set out to become a symbol, but in that moment, she realized how much representation mattered. She wasn't just changing policies, she was changing perceptions. A few weeks later, Vanessa stood on the stage of the mall's central atrium, addressing a crowd of employees and shoppers during a community event. The event was part of her broader effort to foster connections between the mall and the people it served. "Today is about more than shopping or business," she said, her voice carrying over the hum of the crowd. "It's about creating a space where everyone feels valued and respected. This mall belongs to all of us, not just as customers, but as a community." The crowd erupted into applause, and Vanessa scanned the faces before her. Among them, she spotted Roger standing with the security team. He wasn't clapping, but his expression held something she hadn't seen before: respect. After the event, Vanessa returned to her office. She sat at her desk and looked out the window at the bustling mall below. The journey to this point hadn't been easy, and she knew there was still more work to do. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just her mall. It was her legacy, a testament to the power of resilience, accountability, and the courage to stand up for what's right. And as she watched the shoppers move through the space she'd fought so hard to protect, Vanessa knew she was exactly where she was meant to be.